Alex, welcome to the show, brother. How's it going?
It's going great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I you recently sent me over some of your products. I bought an extra box as well because I wanted to try out both flavors before the show. But before we get into your newer product that you've kind of been, doing a little podcast tour around, tell us about the man behind everything. Who is Alex? Like, I've looked at your personal website. Seems like you are very integrated, intuitive, have a lot of different modalities and practices that you do. So before we get into BERSKI, which I definitely want to spend a lot of time on in the food chain, like tell us the person behind that.
Well, came over to the United States from Ukraine back in '92. You know, my parents, I remember going to like the farmhouses and cottages and picking strawberries, and my parents, buying whole pigs and cooking them from nose to tail. And then we moved here, and this is all a reflection on, why I got fat and as a kid, and like going out and getting like hamburgers, thinking my parents thinking it's wheat and meat and cheese made from cows, and it's like, man, I couldn't get my health in order. Very insecure as a kid. Started off, then went off to high school, lost like 40 something pounds playing football, started because they make you exercise, they make you train. And so then I'm like, this is so weird, and then wrestled through high school. At my senior year, I weighed the same as I did in eighth grade, except I was like 9 inches taller. And um, and then started to get more into training and bodybuilding after. And then I'm realizing, man, weight training and diet really can do something to you. And then, so my parents noticed because I didn't go to college and had a hard time figuring out what I wanted to do. So my parents helped me out, and they were like, okay, this guy likes working out. Let's put him in personal training school. And you might see a cat jumping around here, um, at
It's
least
all
one of
good.
one of them. Um, and and it was the easiest thing I've ever learned. It was like the information got sucked into my brain. I put minimal effort into it. So I'm like, okay, look. So then my parents like, go get a job as a personal trainer. So I went to Lifetime, and I was like, this is so easy. I'm getting clients results, and people are changing. And then I started talking to another one of the people there, and they started questioning my beliefs because I was pretty arrogant back in the day. And
Weren't we all?
yeah, and I was like, where'd you learn all this stuff? And he's like, well, there's two routes that I recommend. There's Charles Poliquin and Paul Chek. And he's like, what? I'm like, what did Charles Poliquin do? He's like, well, he trains Olympic athletes. He does nutrition. He does supplements. And I'm like, well, I already went that route. How about what's Paul Chek do? And he's like, oh, he does everything. He does the holistic health. He does the mental, the spiritual, emotional, physical. I'm like, well, I don't know much about that emotional, spiritual stuff. So, and I went in and I went all in. I bought all of his introductory courses. And yeah, that was like 15 years ago. And so finished his master practitioner program because it's like I'm stubborn for the truth, and so when something doesn't line up, I want to know why it doesn't. I want to keep inquiring until it lines up. So I'd ask, I'd go get my NASM certification, and this guy says squat with your toes forward, and I go to this USAW certification, which is a Olympic weightlifting certification, and that instructor says squat with your toes pointed outwards. And I'm like, okay, well, there has to be some, and then you go talk to Paul, and he's like, oh, there's this book called Biochemical Individuality, all these different hip sockets, alignments, femur lengths, and the geometry of people grow. So some people toes forward, some people toes out. And I was like, thank you. There has to be a reason, and then you start looking at like, oh, everyone wants the Asian squat. And you're like, well, their femurs are proportionate to their tibias and fibulas. So that hinge works different versus someone who's like Eastern European descent, which has long femurs. The geometry of that squat is going to be different, which means the bar path is going to have to go a little bit different. So you have to open your legs a little bit further, have good hip mobility to get the bar to go through the center of your femur to get that perfect hip position. It's like little things like that is one glimpse of like the whole piece of the pie of check of um, how I got to where I got to. Is like, well, why does that do that? And then you keep asking that for 20 years, and then you eventually, um, you know, get to a place where things aren't that confusing anymore. And people come in and they're like, man, I don't know why I can't, stay up in the middle, stay up late. And you're like, you're not supposed to. Oh, I didn't know that. I don't know why it's hard to get up every day. Well, do you drink coffee every day? You're probably burnt out and you're stressed out. Oh, well, try something different. Try tea and beans. Oh man, it's easy to get up now. It's like, oh, why, I don't know why I'm so stressed. Like, turn off the TV. Like, it's like so many little things. It's like it all boils down to something so simple, this complexity curve. So, um, and been, eating healthy since I got into the check system, since IMS 1. I remember Paul didn't teach that course, but Paul always comes into each class and kind of gives his 2 cents. And I still remember the day where I was like all, bodybuildered out and inflamed and swollen. And, I'm like, Paul, what can I do to change my health? And he like railed in on me for like 20 minutes. And the whole class was like tightened up, like, oh my God, why is he so hard on this guy? But like 6 months later, he didn't recognize me anymore. And those little things. So food quality, the way you think, the way you breathe, the way you sleep, the way you poop, the way you move. I'm sure I missed one in there, but it's all these different things put together create a good human being, a healthy human being. So, yeah, those are the that's kind of the person behind BERSKI and me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, I've listened to Czech for years. I kind of got into him, probably not as early as you, but I think it was like 2016 or 2017. I started to realize, like, as I started doing more podcasts and learning more about like functional health and food quality, all the same things that Czech realizes, I started to realize that like every person that I was listening to was at least consulting Paul Czech for something, it seemed like. It seemed like Ben Greenfield had him on the show like 3 times and was like, this is kind of one of my spiritual mentors, my guy. And then you go over to like Aubrey Marcus, because I was playing around in psychedelics and, getting some information there. And he does a lot of health stuff too. And it's like Paul Czech's my guy. You start listening to Kyle Kingsbury. Those two are kind of intertwined, but you get what I'm saying. As I was like making my rounds around these like high level individuals, in the podcasting space, it seemed like everything tethered back to Paul Czech. And so I was super happy once he finally did a podcast. And I mean, he gets esoteric to the 10th degree in some of those where they're almost like, I don't even know if he's from this planet. He talks about remote viewing and saving people. I mean, he's just something different. But if it seems as if every single person who has spent time, especially like the level 4, maybe master Czech practitioners who really kind of dove in and took it seriously. I've actually debated doing it. I still may do it one day just because as I grow my business and have some more free time, maybe I'll just dive back into some of his teachings. But it seems like they're all definitely like next level. Every Czech practitioner that I've met knows a lot about food, nutrition, emotional stuff, spirituality. They seem like better individuals overall. Like he definitely is doing something right over with this program.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And so I would imagine that's probably where you started getting introduced to some of this kind of like biodynamic and regenerative kind of culture, right? Because it seems like this would be the third podcast in 3 weeks, I think, where Rudolf Steiner gets brought up. But seems like everybody who's into like regenerative or biodynamic stuff kind of circles back around to Rudolf Steiner at some point. Is that kind of where you got introduced to farm quality?
He's definitely one of the. Paul obviously was he boils it down in this How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy book. Free promotion for him. And but then when you get into the nitty gritty of it about like why going into the the mycelium in the earth and how all the plants talk to each other and the humus in the soil, how it retains water and what eroding of the soils and not rotating crops, and then you start going into Steiner for many reasons. Like my daughter goes to Steiner school. Um, we try to get as much good quality stuff as possible. Even with BERSKI, I'm like hoping that there's a scalable biodynamic farm, but it's going to be hard to get a biodynamic farm to the scale of 5, 10,000 cows a month. I mean that's it's a 2-year-old animal that gets processed, and so I mean you're talking a lot of cows that have to not leave one area and have enough nutritional density in the soil to sustain that kind of grazing. And so yet the next best thing I found was this Savory Institute or regenerative farming. uh, but that was one of the first real deep dives. But with Steiner, I mean, you can't neglect his eurythmia practices of harmonizing the brain, his spiritual teachings, because he was also clairvoyant. Going into how bees function, he has a great PDF on how bees function. He contributed to bee farming as well. He contributed to children's education immensely, and how they need to take their creative brain and not really push the logical brain for too long. We're pushed to be logical too fast, and we lose the ability to be creative and right brained. Um, what am I missing? There's so much. One of his, there's the computer screen. My bad. But one of the biggest things that I took away from Steiner was don't rush your spiritual development too quickly. And that was it hit home after a while, because a lot of people, I mean, especially in Austin, are trying to become enlightened like yesterday, and it's creating a lot of fractured psyches. So it's a good reminder every day about, don't try to be too spiritual too fast. They'll come at the right time. It'll all be, even when you look at other mystical religions, like they don't even let you study the mystical texts until you're over 40 years old, because you haven't lived enough to process or break your ego. You don't have a strong enough ego to break your ego yet. Um, and yeah, so Steiner's a deep dude.
Yeah, it seems like he's just very multifaceted. Obviously, I've never studied him quite yet. He's another person on my list that maybe I'll get into his readings and stuff like that. I may or may not buy a bunch of land in the next 5-10 years and have some cattle and things out there. It's kind of like a dream of mine, but then sometimes I know it's a lot of work, and we'll see how business goes. And I definitely want to get out of the city, whether I farm or not, or it might just be more like a little homestead that I do on a little bit of land. But definitely want to get out of the city, and probably will read some of his books and learn some stuff from my buddy Ben and other people who are already doing the farming when that happens. And, the bees are interesting because I was just actually reading how like they're dying, not only dying at an alarming rate just from what we've been doing, but since the geoengineering has hyped up to like a next level, we've been doing that for decades, but it's been at like obviously clearly you can visibly see it over the last 5 to 10 years where it's just been super dramatic. And now they're having hearings in Congress about it. And Florida just banned it, that they have to be done, I think, by October 1st, which is coming up. So that'll be nice for Florida leading the charge on that. But the bees, we spray those aerosolized like the lead iodide, the silver iodide, the aluminum nanoparticles. It destroys their habitats and they get infected. Bees are so tiny. Think about, how many heavy metals a human could accumulate in comparison to probably what a bee could tolerate. It's probably not very much. And so that's going into the soil. It's going into the plants. Plants are out here, or the bees are out here pollinating. And so we're destructing them in a big way from geoengineering, but also just, you got to be careful with even getting raw honey if there's a GMO crop around, because the honey will have glyphosate in it. So, what does that mean for the bee when it even has glyphosate in it? We don't really know. I would imagine it's probably not great with all of the research that we have on glyphosate in humans and what it does to us. So the bee population is very interesting because it seems like almost no one's ringing the alarm on it. And it is critical for survival, basically.
Yeah, I have bees, and I had bees, and they were great one day, and then one day they collapsed. And so I don't know if someone sprayed something, they picked it up, brought it back to the hive, but like one day they were good, the next day they were not good at all. And yeah, it broke my
Wow.
heart. I stood there in disbelief for so long. Like, what did I do? Like I literally open them up, check them out. They're all like, they do this amazing thing. I don't know if anyone who's never had bees, you open the lid and you'll see like, I don't know, 50, 60 bees like lined up on the corners, and they all like put their hands over the front of the frames, and they'll look at you, see what you're doing, and they'll like stare at you and like kind of talk to each other. They're the cutest freaking things. So people who are afraid of bees need to go put on a bee suit and like go be near bees, because they're amazing. And they vibrate at the tune of C, and they heal your body. Beekeepers are the longest living like profession. So the people who practice beekeeping live the longest historically. And
Wow.
yeah, and so they do this thing with the air. Like I'm sure some people know about this, but bees like in physics can't fly. So it's really weird because that they can fly. And so what they've thought is they don't actually fly, but the way their wings work is they create a viscosity into the air, and they're almost swimming through the air more than they are flying through the air. And so they're fascinating creatures. And yeah, one day I opened it, took them out, everything's great, brushed them off, put everything back, put the lid back on, closed them, and then the next week I came back and I'm like, why? Because my cold plunges, I can see my bees, and they're always like flying in and out. And there's always like water near my cold plunge, so they'll always accumulate and grab some water and go back. So it's like their constant water source. But then one day, yeah, they stopped flying, and then I came back the next week, and they were all dead, and it was heartbreaking. Actually, I was so like depressed about it that I didn't even tell Sarah about it until she noticed it, my wife, and then she was like, "Hey, do you know if bees I think are gone or dead?" I was like, I didn't have the heart to tell you. It's like I'm still sad about it. And I'm before I get more bees, I'm gonna go plant like tons of flowers that they like, and so that way they don't have to travel as far and they can get what they need on my 5 acres here in Austin. So that's kind of the big goal of study is finding what flowers grow like in February and March, April, all the way through the winter. Because I never harvest them. I always I let the bees have all of their honey, and if they make extra, then I'll take it off of my flow hive. But other than that, I mean, I check them. No parasites. They have some beetles, but all of them have beetles. But yeah, none of those varroa mites. Nothing. Like they collapsed out of nowhere, and so the only thing I can think of was my neighbors sprayed something, and they must have picked something up and brought it back to the hive.
Yeah, it's that, or it's literally just coming from the sky, man. I think that geoengineering is a big deal. You sound a little tinfoil hat when you were saying it 5, 7, 8 years ago, but I think it's becoming a little bit more. I mean, when they just literally had a whole meeting in Congress about it yesterday. A lot of the congressmen are basically, I think it was Tim Burchett or somebody. I posted a video of him basically asking the guy if he would drink a glass of water filled with the same chemicals that they're spraying in the sky to block the sun and do whatever, trying to play God out there. And he basically said probably not, is what, I think it was Tim Burchett, one of the politicians. And, so, they won't drink it, but they'll spray it in the sky in billions of tons. And that's just destroying. I mean, you see different farmer videos too, talking about they've been growing, there for how many ever decades, and now all their plants have aluminum in there when they check the soil. And the geoengineering guy, that's what he discovered. He wanted to retire actually, and he moved out and bought a homestead and was just collecting rainwater and was wondering where all this metal was coming from. He's like, I moved out in the remote area. This is like, that's what people wanted to do to be healthy. They wanted to do kind of what you're doing, to go get 5 acres, go get 20 acres, live on the land, grow some food, get some food maybe from a neighbor, and just be retired and chill. And lo and behold, when they start spraying the sky, you're not even safe out in the middle of nowhere. I think my buddy Matt Blackburn posted something on his story at some point about because he lives like in the mountains in Idaho, and he's like 3 hours from a city, I think, or 3 hours from an airport at least. Something. He's way out there. And he still said that geoengineering had some implications up there with the silver iodide and everything. So it's just absolutely ridiculous. And I don't think anyone voted for it, or anyone. We didn't even vote in a politician who voted for it. I don't really know exactly how it just became a thing. It's one thing to vote, but we don't really get a vote. But even if you vote for a politician, I don't remember anyone running a campaign on geoengineering. I don't remember that. So I think that they just kind of do what they want, but they're affecting everyone's health with that. And the bees are collapsing because that could have been playing a part into your beehive.
Yeah, yeah, I do notice less trails in Texas, which is fantastic. Like when I look up at the sky, like I see less of those lines in the sky, those weird lines. Um,
Yeah.
but um, what was I going to say? I did notice that there was a company that was promoting sodium, potassium, magnesium, and that's what they were spraying in the air with some other mixtures. And I was like, that's kind of what all of our electrolyte mixtures are made out of. I was like, that's so strange. I'm like, they're the same strain, the same formulas. And I was like, I wonder if there's who's buying from who. Are they buying from them because it retains water, or are they buying from them and putting it in packets? I'm like, it was one of those weird data points that like popped in my head and I haven't forgot about it yet, but I'm still pondering about it until I get more information.
Yeah. I don't care if they want to spray the best chemicals in the world. I don't want anything putting into my body from breathing air besides, car exhaust or something that we can't really get away from if we live in the city. I just don't think we should be out there spraying crazy shit and, trying to play with the weather, even if if it has some benefit to soil. We know from the Savory Institute that you brought up, we can regenerate soil. We could do it as humans by recreating nature. We don't need to spray stuff in the sky, in my opinion. Not to mention how expensive that is. Even if taxpayer funded, it's still our money. And then you got to fly jet fuel around, and you got to pay the pilot, and so it's like how much money is going into them. Even if it were to be healthy, it's just a money pit and a money drain, and we don't even know the backdrop of what will happen, the second and third order effects of. I live in Florida here, right? So it seems like we have these increasing hurricanes that are stronger than they've ever been, right? They'll go from 2 to 5 overnight, right? And there's I think some of that's nefarious play directly intentional, but, what if it is just from geoengineering? It's not intentional. It's just because we're trying to play around with the ecosystem. And then you have a secondary effect where the hurricanes are now stronger. And so we don't really, or floods, I think there was just one in Texas, wasn't there? Crazy flood. They were
Yep.
playing around with the weather over there. And the guy was like, kind of going on a couple talk shows talking about, yeah, we were, but it would never cause the flood. And it's like, how the fuck do you know? Like, you're just out there with drones playing around with the weather.
Yeah, if people think that we can't mess with weather from Austin, Texas, there's something that happens every single year, which is we get an African desert storm here. So from the storms happening in the desert in Africa, the sands get up into the jet stream and fly all the way to Austin, and then it becomes dusty here for like a couple weeks. And
Oh,
everyone, it's like pretty
crazy.
common knowledge. Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, those are the storms happening in Africa from the dust storms. They go up in the atmosphere and then they fly over here, and then we get a bunch of weird poor air quality here. And so that's like totally normal. But yet, what happens when we deposit something in the air and then we don't think it'll travel across the world or across an ocean? So these kind of things are ignored very frequently.
Yeah. I think it's absolutely crazy. And I tell people all the time, like, cause my practice, I do a lot of detoxification of heavy metals. It's kind of my main thing. I think that they're the most toxic substances on the planet. And I think a lot of our, diseases and, whatever diagnosis you have, autoimmune stuff, could really be relieved, or at least you should test out if heavy metals are causing that. And in the beginning, before you give into pharmaceutical drugs. And so I do a lot of detoxification, and see people heal a lot from that and get a lot better. And I tell people, it sucks that we have to take all these, binders here and all these mineral supplementations, but we've really just absolutely destroyed the food system simultaneously as we've let in tons of heavy metals into the ecosystem. And it's more than metals. It's molds and plastics and chemicals and, fragrances. It's a lot, but I think that the heavy metals are non-biodegradable and they build up pretty nefariously. And I see pretty much every client, from high level biohackers who have been on my program to the average person who's got tons of health issues. I see all of them eliminate at least some degree of heavy metals. We definitely all have some, whether or not they're affecting you or not. And, it sucks that we have to take all these supplements and also try to go out of our way to find a farmer and do regenerative. But at the end of the day, that's just kind of the world we're in, unless something gets better. I did see McDonald's just put 200 million into regenerative farming. So maybe there's like a hope and a prayer. I don't know if I'm going to go through the drive-through or not, but hey, maybe that's the first step.
Another fun thing is I think parasites hold like thousands of times their weight in heavy metals. So I treat everyone for parasites, heavy metals. I assume they have them. Most people do. Anyone that comes with a digestive issue, any kind of symptoms with their skin or brain fog, joint pain, I'm like, we're going on a parasite protocol because most people haven't done it. And they're like 30, 40, 50 years old with, animals and pets, and, who knows what they're doing. And when your body becomes less vital, your heat goes up, and parasites see an infrared. So they go and they're like, oh, there's food. Let's go eat decomposing tissue that's hot. And so the same thing with a compost pile. You walk by a bush, and if you see it's all green, you may not stop with the bush, but all of a sudden, if you see a bush and it has all these little red dots on it, you're gonna like, ooh, are those berries? And you're gonna go investigate. So as people get hotter, because they're like the smorgasbord of stuff that you said, the plastics, the fragrances, the chemicals, the metals, the parasite. As your body accumulates those things, your vitality goes down and your heat goes up. So you start to decompose because you have to run hotter. If your car is redlining, it's going to be hotter. If your body is trying to redline and process all of these extra chemicals and through your liver and your kidneys, it's going to run hotter. And then once things run hotter, they break down faster, and so they attract parasites. You become a natural food source for this organism that is designed to remove dead flesh and to remove dead things like maggots. They remove dead things. They eat all the dead stuff. And then the beautiful thing about the fungus is the fungus kills the parasites and then creates sugars, and that sugars is what feeds the plants, and then you have the symbiotic relationship between leaves falling to the ground, attracting parasites, decomposing those and eating those down, and then the fungus and mycelium breaks that down and creates sugar and feeds the sugar to the feeds the dead parasite matter to the plant, and then the plant returns sugars to the fungus, feeds the fungus. That's where I messed that up. It's it serves the parasite up to the plant because plants are carnivorous in nature. They still need their proteins and for their cell walls, things like that. So that's a fun misconception that plants don't eat meat. They do, but it's very small and you can't see it. But they eat all sorts of organisms served up to them by fungal networks, and which the plant returns the favor to the fungal networks by giving a sugar, and then the whole system, you know, revolves and continues to go. But in a human body, when you have too much fungus and too many parasites, your own body can't get enough nourishment, and it starts to get hotter again because it's trying to process all this other stuff out of the system. So yeah, I treat everyone like it. They have parasites and fungal infections, and because most of them do.
Oh, every single client who at least stays on my program for a significant amount of time is going to release a lot of parasites because as you begin to remove the heavy metals, then the parasites just naturally, because I think I have the same line of thinking. I have done a few parasite cleanses when I was being treated from Lyme, but I was on so many other things at the same time. I don't remember. I was just kind of feeling crazy. I was on all these herbs for Lyme, and I was with Dr. Minkoff out in Clearwater. It was like a $20,000 thing. He had me hooked up to IVs and all kinds of crazy things going on when I was sick. So I don't recall like a big parasite coming out, honestly, until I started doing like the program that I do now. And I've seen tons of them come out over time. And my clients, hit me with emails and stuff like that all of the time. And I'm in complete alignment that I think that they're there to feed on the heavy metals. That if you have a better working immune system, better gut function, lower level of toxicity, you'll have no need for the parasite, and it will remove itself as you regain energy. And I just see that in all my clients. And actually, I have a practitioner who does some pretty gnarly like mucoid plaque type cleanses and parasite cleanse. I think they're like the Zen cleanse that people use. I haven't done one of those, but she kind of preps her clients with those, and then if they're ready, she'll send them to me for a little bit of a stronger like heavy metal type of thing. That seems pretty cool. It might be like a kind of like opening up some of the organs of elimination and stuff like that, and kind of like a preparatory phase for the detoxification that I do. And those clients have all actually been pretty responsive to the program. So maybe there is something to starting with a prep phase. I never did that, and a lot of my clients don't, but I do get some clients from her that do those kind of parasite cleanses that seem to work. She has some crazy videos online that are like the most nastiest parasites and plaques that I've ever seen.
Yeah, the stuff that comes out of people is wild, for sure.
Just the fact that like when I would just like keep seeing them come out for years, there was just actually just a period, like I think it was like last month or so, where I had them come out even still like years into my program, and you're almost like, how many are in there? It's like never ending, but they are always like laying eggs, so they're reproducing and stuff too inside of you. So it could be that they're, until you get fully healthy and get rid of most of your toxicity, that there's a continuous kind of like rebreeding of them. They are also living. But you're right. I think that's another reason why we need more of this nutrition, whether it's going to come from your diet and your organ meats, or I like supplementation as far as minerals go, because I think we kind of need a little bit of a higher amount than what we used to need before we were introduced to a lot of this toxicity. So like zinc is a big one that's depleted by heavy metals, and a lot of other ones across the board. And so I just kind of think supplementation works for the time that we're in. but I do try to hammer down home on the nutrition piece of it. For, food forward. You're not going to out supplement going over to the drive through all the time. I had a client just not even do the program with me because I seen his client intake form, and it was all like Chinese food and like fast food, and I was like, we got to clean this up, and he got like offended and told someone that I know, and I'm like, well, I'm not gonna the bullshit you hear. You have to still eat right. You can't just take the supplements and eat whatever you want. That's crazy.
Yeah,
So I
it's
do think the food is definitely top of importance, and then where you fit in your functional supplements and cleanses and stuff from there is how you do it.
yeah. I think what you described was like the expectation of going to the bank, taking out a loan, and then saying that's how much money you have in your bank account, and expecting not to pay it back. It's like that's what that Chinese food repetitively is going to do. It's like you're going to the bank, taking out more money, leveraging your house, leveraging your assets, and then being like, one day the bank comes for your house, and you're like, whoa, I thought this was money, this is free money, and that's what
Yeah.
people's bodies do.
That's what they think that they can just like out supplement it. And to a degree, if you're on the right program and you're not eating terrible, some of my clients don't eat perfect, and they have kids and they're on budgets, and I get it. But you got to try to lean into whole foods for the majority of it, 80/20, 90/10. I'll be a little lenient, but if you're feeding your kids just like chicken nuggets all day and like and like freezer food and just trying to take the supplements, and they telling me they have ADHD and all these other things going on, it's like you got to start to lean them into some of these healthier foods. Like, it's kids get away with it because they have a little bit more energy and they can actually kind of cheat the diet a little bit more. But if you're older and you're sick and you have autoimmune conditions, you pretty much got to dial it in, period. You're past the point of like cheating here and there and doing that. And you're usually got food sensitivities and all sorts of other things that have built on this level of toxicity that you have. So I do want to get into a lot of this before we talk about the beef sticks, just the food system in general, because you do have a pretty vast knowledge of and maybe it comes from the Paul Chek, but it sounds like you probably learned a lot while developing this product, I would think, trying to source things and do things. And I talk a lot about farming because I think it needs to be told. And tell us some of the like maybe food labeling misconceptions that are going on. We can maybe start with beef and then even go over into some of the other animals. But what are kind of some of the things to look for, things that seem nefarious, things that are greenwashing, anything like that?
So one of the biggest things with beef is people see grass fed, and they have to remember that all cows are grass fed. Every single cow. There is no cow that's 100% grain fed. So when they see grass fed, what they're not giving you is what it's finished with. So the grass fed is all cows, but then what is it finished with? So you're looking for like a grass fed, grass finished. If you add pasture raised, the affidavit will say it's never been inside more than 60 days in its life, which means if it goes over 60 days, it's a grass fed, grass finished animal. So the cows, you could still feedlot a grass-fed, grass-finished cow. All you have to do is deliver grass pellets to it, and it's still grass-finished. All you got to do is give way more grass to it. So when you're looking for beef, any kind of animal that that grazes, so all these four-legged animals, bison, cows, goats, mutton, what am I missing? Deer, elk, like these are all animals which graze on grass. And if you're getting grass fed, grass finished, pasture raised, all three of those, first of all, on a USDA label, whatever's on the label has to be in the package. So that's why a lot of companies will go on their website and say whatever they want, but what on the package is what has to be in the thing. So a grass fed, grass finished package with a USDA bug, the minimum quality of meat that has to go in there is grass fed and grass finished, which means it could be feedlot. So when you're looking at labels, if you see that USDA bug, which everything in a grocery store, like a Whole Foods, a Costco, they have to be USDA certified, which is why we went that route. Which is why we went with the route of not putting spices, not putting natural flavors, these kind of things, because it has to be on there, and we want it to be transparent. So anytime you see spices, you can go on the USDA's website and see it's like over 160 things that they can put into spices. And there's hundreds of things you could put in natural flavors. There's too many to list, is what I'm trying to say. but it's free on the USDA's website. You can go find it. It's not hard to find. And maybe I'll find it. I can give it to you for like the show notes or maybe something like that. So that way you guys can
Yeah.
pop it in there and they can look. But it's all right there. And it could be any of those things. That's the thing. It could be any of those things. Back to the whole USDA bug. All animals that are grass-fed, grass-finished, and pasture-raised on the label. Remember, you could still have a pasture-raised animal that is not grass-finished. You could, because it's outside, you could deliver on a tractor a big pile of wheat and drop it outside into a trough, and you can have a pasture-raised, grass-fed animal. And so when you're looking for all three of those labels, and if you're in you're going to your farmer's market, that's what you're looking for. Hey, are your cows ever inside? Do you ever like bring them inside for any reason in the barn, or, do they ever go in a field? No, they're always outside. Okay, great. Do you ever finish them with anything? What do you mean by that? That's usually a great sign. Like, no, they eat outside and then we go process them. Okay, great. So farmers don't think in those kind of greenwashing labels of like grass fed being a greenwashing label. Like it's not, it's like something new. It's grass fed. It's like, no, every cow is grass fed for over 70% of its life before they finish it and plump it up. So these are the things that you're looking for with like beef and other ruminant animals that are bison, goat, sheep, lamb, mutton. If there's a difference between those last three I said. I can't remember mutton. I think mutton is sheep, but I can't remember which one it is. But then you start going into chicken. Then this is why we haven't released a chicken or a turkey. I've called every single chicken manufacturer and turkey manufacturer that can produce thousands of birds a month, and no one can produce a bird without adding in corn, wheat, soy, or canola meal. No one. And if there's a farmer out there that hears this, I would make a stick that's turkey or chicken like today. I would put in a packaging order and we'll add it to BERSKI. But we have called every farmer, and every farmer knows a lot of farmers. And you start asking around, and so even the pasture raised ones are still fed something like these vegetarian diets. But we know that birds, they forage, they eat seed heads, they eat bugs. This is not new to us, but they are supplemented with a corn or a soy or canola or a wheat of some sort, or a combination of those. So you're looking for, first of all, you're not going to find a commercial bird that's not fed something of those four. It's going to be corn free and soy free, but it's going to be wheat fed and canola fed. Like they make canola oil, the rape seed, when they squish the oil out of the seeds, that byproduct goes to animals. But then what's interesting is like all the beneficial oils that a chicken will have from eating a seed head is inside, the oils are inside of that seed head, but they've squished all the beneficial oils out that could be beneficial to that bird, and they've given them the byproduct without the fats inside of it. So there is no commercial bird out there that I've found. So you're going to have to go local, and even local, it's going to be a hard time to find it. You're going to probably find someone with like 50 chickens, and then he's like, nah, we have about 50 in rotation. And so always, that's a little bit interesting. Fish, wild caught is always going to be better. You still have to look at labels. I found on, there's a big, I don't know if it's going to get flagged or whatnot, but there's a big chain where you have to pay a membership, and it's in like every state. But they have a bag of wild caught fish, but when you turn it over, because you're like, wait, this fish isn't wild caught. Like you can't like why does this fish that is normally farmed, and you look on the back and it says there's a little asterisk that says wild caught or responsibly farmed. And so because of that asterisk, they can put on the top of the label, wild caught. But there's an asterisk, and you have to go look on the bottom, and then it was like, my wife's always like, how do you find this stuff? Like, and even like when they use we use real pumpkin, like in I think Starbucks uses like real pumpkin, and a lot of companies, like you can name a company called Real Pumpkin, and then say you use real pumpkin as a pumpkin spice, but it's like fully synthetic. It's like little things like that. It's very confusing, which is like what we're talking about. It's like eat food. Like eat real food. If it like grows out of a tree, grows in the ground, walks on the earth, swims in the water, like eat that. But so there's all these fun little tricks that get played, and I think natural flavors, you could put MSG in a natural flavors. So unless it has a MSG free bug on it, then that's not part of the MSG in the natural flavors. So the bugs, anything on a USDA label, and if it says it's not in there, it can't be in there. We don't use sodium nitrate. It's we put nitrate free. We have to put with an asterisk because people don't know that sodium nitrate isn't all salt. It's one of the molecules in salt, and so it's in celery, and it's also like MSG is in heavy amounts in tomatoes, but it's combined with the other clusters, so your body knows what to do with it. It's not isolated and concentrated, and then your body's like, what do I do with all of this? And then it either increases your blood pressure, creates some other problems that your body has to detox from. So when your body experiences things that are from a natural form, it recognizes it on a cellular level, and it can break it down and pull it apart and detox it properly. Um, I think I answered your question on what to look for on
Yeah.
meat.
I was just thinking MSGs and tomatoes. No wonder I want like four bowls of pasta whenever there's. I mean, there's a lot going on with the gluten and everything. But damn, when you start eating pasta, it's almost hard to quit. But I almost never eat pasta. But
Oh,
it's absolutely
with
delicious when I do.
with pasta, when it tears your gut up, it creates an adrenaline response. So your body releases stronger drugs than morphine when your body's gut lining gets disrupted, and so people get addicted to the own drugs that they make from when they like pasta with gluten in this country because it basically tears your gut up. And in order to not feel that pain, your kidneys will release adrenaline and norepinephrine to make you feel so good, and then you start getting addicted to that feeling, and you associate it with pasta, which is why it's hard to get people off pasta.
The sauce. I mean, it's in the meats. I mean, it's just a whole dish of deliciousness for sure. I have found that there's one company that I get these organic sourdough noodles from online. I can't, maybe organic bread of heaven if anyone's living. I think that I don't know if it's like the highest quality ever, but it's pretty good quality. It's all organic, no additives, and they'll send you some sourdough pasta. Or I've tried some of those over the years, like the Durham wheat, like the real Italian ones. And it is definitely a different experience from what we get in the States, and definitely feels way less addicting. It feels more filling, feels almost more nutritious. So there is ways to kind of have a kind of a slightly guilt-free, but if I eat it all the time, I still either get fat or I eat too much because it's an addicting dish in and of itself with everything going on. But yeah, I want to go back to because grass fed's all the rave right now, and I want to get into the chicken part a little bit too. But the grass fed is like that. I think most people would think if they seen pasture raised, like I'm good. This is top of the line here. But you're basically saying that they can drop off a bale of grains out in the pasture and let them eat it and still fatten them up a little bit. I did some vetting, and there was one because I buy everything local. If I run out of some meat, I may order a White Oak Pastures or like a Force of Nature type of box, but I do have cattle at a time. It's not technically regenerative, but the guy's been, no vaccines, no antibiotics, 100% grass for over, like their family's been doing it for 100 years. It's about a little over an hour from me. So I take the best that I can get for the local area. So I'm cool with that. But all the dairy products that I get are all regenerative, and, and the vegetables are all crop organic, crop rotated, and they're all within a couple hours of me. There's a farmer's market here, and I kind of go there every weekend and pick up all that, and I buy almost nothing from the store. But there was one where it was like grass fed, kind of like you said, and I had to reach out, one of the, not the local cattle that I get it from, but another one that's local, and they were giving them lentils. I realized, like, I had to do some little bit of digging because it just says grass fed on there, and it just seemed a little bit fattier, the steaks, right? Still looked really red, still looked like it was mostly definitely grass, but they were clearly, I was like, this just looks like a little bit fattier than, like, I eat a lot of grass-fed steaks, so it's like, this just seemed off, and did some digging, and it did seem like there was supplemental lentils there, which maybe is not as bad as GMO and soy and all the things. They probably were keeping it to something decent, but definitely still supplementing the feed. I don't think it's, the worst. I think you could still get really healthy eating that, but, I had to reach out to another farmer and talk to him. So you really have to go to your local. But that's the thing. When you're going to the grocery store, you're going to get misled almost always. I know most people have to do it, but there are usually, I found farms for so many people who thought that they couldn't find a farm. Eat Wild, I always promote. There's like the Raw Milk Finder on the what's the Weston A Price, where usually if you find raw milk you find other foods as well, or you can find, you ask that guy where he gets his food, because he's usually probably getting his food from another farmer. You guys got to ask questions, and people don't want to go out of their way. But the decentralization of the food system, in my opinion, is the most important. We're up in arms right now over political things that we cannot control, and I did feel like it was kind of spiritual battle, the recent events. But not to get too political here, the one thing you can do, which you do every single day, 2 to 3 times a day, is eat local food from a farmer that even if you have to drive out of your way a little bit, and it's maybe it's not Uber Eats, or it's not a grocery delivery, but at least you know what you're getting, and you're not being deceived. And then you're also putting that money back into the local community instead of just some conglomerate of, it's cool that McDonald's is investing in regenerative, but we've just nudged them in that direction, and they're just trying to make some money, and they're trying to stay in the loop before before people just quit eating McDonald's, because we understand that the cheese isn't cheese and the bread isn't bread, kind of like you alluded to, and it's the cheapest beef on the planet. At some point, enough of us will wake up and raise kids where we just won't eat there, so they're just following trends. But we force that. The people like us here right now who've been buying regenerative meat for a while, we force their hand in that deal. Basically, like, this is what the trend is going. This is why you see regenerative milk. Alexander Farms is actually a good brand that I will buy out of Sprouts or Whole Foods. They do regenerative A2 yogurts and milks and stuff, low temp pasteurized. So that's a decent. So there's starting to be more decent options where you go, but you have to do a lot more research when you're in the store, because it's deceiving and it's deceptive, and they're just trying to make money. And there's even grass-fed beef, I would say, that are coming from like 1,000 different cattle at one time. Like, if you're just buying like Sprouts is grass-fed beef, you don't know if that's coming from South America, from Australia, America. They're blending it all up into one thing. They're probably spraying it with something to keep it a little bit more red than it would be, because it's going to be, need shelf life and all sorts of things like that. But I think you're doing the right thing by buying grass fed no matter what, because you're like I said, kind of forcing them to say, hey, this is the direction we're going, and we should be doing more grass fed cattle. But I think you are going to encounter greenwashing, and big money at play, and this deceptive practices when you're in the supermarket, more so than your local farmer market, where you start to ask them questions and you get food directly from there.
Yeah, a lot of CHEK practitioners do get some flack for being kind of zealoted about all their food. I like to remind everyone that I talk to, CHEK practitioner wise, and is you got to meet people where they're at. And a lot of people are always like shooting for the most optimal, and like majority of the country can't do that. So what do we do? And then you start looking at our political climates, and you start getting discouraged. And what I remind everyone is that you vote every day by what you put your money into. So if you spend even one extra trip by buying regenerative at the farmers market for a little bit more, you're giving that farmer to buy money to buy an extra cow, which then and then it goes to 2 cows, then it goes to 10 cows, then it goes to 20, and then it goes, oh, I need to buy more land. He has more money to buy land, and then it expands. So now you're having different people with where with different experiences of growing proper food for us. And you buy into a co-op, you're not buying vegetables, you're buying into their dream, their vision of providing good food and farming for everybody, and good and health. And we do this every day. So it's like, yes, it's a little bit extra to go to like a local coffee shop, but or is it better to go to a Starbucks? It's like you're giving money to a big corporation that you may not want to see more of. There's plenty of that, but every time you make a decision, it adds to that decision, and that their dream continues to grow. And kind of like what you were talking about with Mickey D's over here buying regenerative. I'm like, what who are they buying it from? Are they buying out farms that are regenerative and then bending that to what they're doing? And, so then it becomes wishy-washy, and then you don't know where your food's coming from again, because everything is regenerative. And then if people are confused by the grass-fed, you're going to get confused by commercialized regenerative. I saw an organic Gatorade recently full of dyes and with organic cane sugar. And I'm like, are we doing this? Like, I'm still not going to drink this, and but a lot of people are like, oh, it's organic and it's a step up, but there's how many food, like, drink brands out there that are not putting dyes and stuff in their food, like. And have we forgotten about water? Like, if you have, I would drink hose water over Gatorade any day. I would, we could detox the heavy metals. We can, clay is super cheap. We can get, bentonite clay and zeolite clay. I'll figure that out. But I'm like, let's go back to water. Have you seen the movie Idiocracy? I call it the documentary.
No,
Huh?
no, I'll have to watch it now.
You have to watch it. It's about this guy who is like kind of like a dumb person in today's times, but he goes into he tries to freeze his body for 25 years or something, like 10 years. But then, like, something happens where everything collapses and he emerges like 500 years later. And even though he was the dumbest person now, he was like the smartest person, because the human species have like devolved into putting Gatorade on plants and everything's like a barren wasteland. And he gets criticized for people trying to grow crops with water. And he's like, toilet water? You want to put toilet water on our food? And he's like, yeah, that's what plants grow. He's like, no, they grow with this Gatorade like drink or this electrolyte drink. And it's almost turning into a documentary at this point. But it kind of shows you how easily a society can go from, like, here's a good idea, and it becomes a terrible idea once it's implemented, because no one's asked questions, thought it through, and gone back to the basics. They're trying to do something new, and they're trying to be relevant. And it's like, can we not do extra stuff and try to reinvent the wheel when a lot of the stuff that we were doing in the past is working? And yet it is also very good that we have surgery and we have all these other things, and like we have bacterial care. And like, I'm glad did you know surgeons, they reduced surgery death by over 50% because the surgeons washed their hands in between patients, in between surgeries. That's all it took. It took them washing their hands. And now they have a protocol and it reduced bacteria. So these kind of things are like really important when you're cutting someone open and extracting organs and putting new ones in, sewing them up to reduce infection, all these other things. But for the most part, it's like, get your feet in the dirt, get dirty a little bit, smell some cow poop, some healthy cow poop, and like, get that microbiome into your system and get out in the sunlight. That's a whole other conversation. People avoiding sunlight. And uh, but yeah, it gets real convoluted real quick when marketing does what it's supposed to uh, in the wrong hands. But yeah, but with that
Yeah, it's
same
funny you
marketing,
brought
we
that
can
up.
turn it over.
I had a similar like thought process with the McDonald's thing, as if like, so who's checking these farms? Like, are they really regenerative? Like, are they, what are they sneaking into the feed to, fatten them up? Because regenerative beef, to be quite frank, isn't going to be the same fatty burger as what they're serving up right now. So is their client base going to want that? Maybe, just because I think that collectively we're kind of realizing that we've been poisoned, and now enough of us have gotten super sick or gotten poisoned or got inflamed. It might not have been as dramatic as having Lyme and stuff like me, but a lot of people have like, oh, I don't feel that great, and kind of started changing at least their diet or taking some supplements. So you're going to start to raise your kids in that way. So there's going to be a generational effect that happens sooner than later, where you're not going to want the McDonald's just because of the toxins. But to be honest, a grain-fed steak or a grain-fed burger that's super fatty is absolutely delicious, and you can use some fat to fatten up the regeneratives, but it's definitely going to be a whole different taste profile, all sorts of different things, and I just don't know who's really keeping an eye on it. But I can't hate on them, at least maybe trying to save the planet, because I think regenerative farming and biodynamic farming is really the only way to save the soil. And if we don't, I think it was buddy Charles, he's really big. He's done a TED talk and speaks with the White Oak Pasture guy. He owns Pharaoh Skin. Not sure if you ever heard of that skincare company. It's a cool, like, they do regenerative pig lard and regenerative tallow and stuff like that. And he was on my show. It'll come out, I think, like one before this one will. And he was talking about this whole thing, this ecosystem, and how it regenerates the soil. And it's kind of the only way, I think, to move forward. He was talking about how we only have, like, some experts say 50 or 60 crops left, which is, 50, 60 years because the topsoil is so eroded. So maybe someone got in McDonald's ear and was like, hey, you ain't even going to have a McDonald's if you don't start investing in practices that actually regenerate the soil so that you can still have a business model in 50 years from now. So it could be partially that.
Yeah. I mean, even if we go back a little bit, there's two big chicken producers that everyone knows, and I'm sure they can come up with them all by themselves. Um, what's interesting is if you go to a local processor, um, you have to have a USDA attendant watching everything that you're doing upon processing and then having your meat inspected. Big companies have self inspectors, so they don't actually have to go into the facility and check each thing. So when you're seeing, these big chicken producers and you're like, how are they getting away with this? It's because no one goes in there, and no one from, our regulation agencies goes in there and double checks all this stuff. The same way that, the difference between air chilled, the difference between air chilled and not air chilled. So
Chlorine.
chlorine. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if they don't dip it longer than 7 seconds, I think it's 5 to 7 seconds, they don't have to put it on there. But then they can't put air chilled on there. So when you're looking at chickens, pasture raised, air chilled, then you're getting a better quality. So if you're going to eat chicken, you're going to get corn, you're going to get some kind of gluten or a wheat that they're going to feed them. You're going to get canola. But now we're talking about increasing the quality, pasture raised, air chilled. Now you know that they haven't been chlorine dipped, and you know that they have been foraging, even if it's in a little pen. Because I get that, like they're in these little like houses that move around. Because like go leave a chicken out in Texas, it's going to get mauled by either a possum, a raccoon, a hawk, a fox. Like it's gone within a couple of days. Like my friend down the street had chickens. One night they accidentally left it open. All their chickens dead. One night. So they've been
One night.
scoped. One night, all their chickens gone, and they had like 6 chickens. So, yeah. So it's like I get the whole pasture, like the whole like new fresh bed every single day they move it, and then new
Yeah.
bugs, new insects, because it's I don't know where there's a place besides Hawaii where there's no natural predators for chickens. Um, so we have to do something. And when you're talking about producing 280 billion birds a year, billion with a B. It's like,
That's how many birds we produce?
yeah, that's how many birds we process. Yeah, a year in the United States, 280 billion. Yeah, yeah. So that's a lot of birds to what is that? That's it's like 28 billion, about 24 billion a month, pretty much um that we have to grow. So like, where are all these chickens running around in? And they have to have land. And so if you're gonna let them go, you're gonna get eaten by coyotes and foxes. So I do like that little moving tractor thing, even though it's not the most ideal. But I have some friends of mine who do some fun stuff where they put chicken wire over like animal carcasses. They'll take like remains and stuff like that, and they'll dump it into this chicken wire, and basically it attracts flies, and then the flies produce maggots, and then the chickens can reach in and grab all the maggots off the food. And I was like, that's pretty smart. Then they have free insects, free bugs. There's all these other cool like people doing this out of like little Costco containers, and they kind of tilt them up, and the maggots can't climb out, so they fly in, put a bunch of like compost in there, and then it creates a bunch of maggots that can't come out, and then they basically take that tray and they give it to their chickens, and then the chickens go
Yeah.
nuts. So it's like little things like that. You could find feed and make feed pretty easily because there's plenty of flies and stuff and insects, instead of feeding them corn that are arguably more nutritious for a chicken than corn or soy. Um, yeah, I don't
Yeah, I
know
think it's a
where we.
challenge. My buddy who I talked about at the Biodynamic farm up in Michigan, he even, I think he buys the super crazy good feed, but he still says they get a little bit. Like it's a challenge to do a bird and just have enough insects and enough places to roam. Then you got the predator issue, and he lives out in 60 acres in middle of nowhere, Michigan. I'm sure there's something up there. I don't know exactly all the geo stuff of what predators are up there, but I'm sure there's something. There's always birds, or there's some kind of predator looking for a free lunch. And so he does a little bit of grain, but he goes out of his way to get the highest quality and corn and soy free and all that. So I think chickens are a challenge, and they also are very dirty birds. I almost never eat chicken. I have a couple local that are decent, or I can do white oak pastures, because to me, white oak pasture is kind of local. It's like 6 hours away. It's not too bad. I just get and they'll deliver. So I'll do that sometimes and get a whole bird. But I have a decent farm that does it around me as well. But just not really doesn't fulfill me as much as beef. It seems like we were meant to eat a lot of red meat, I think. And there's some iron issues that can arise, and I donate blood like every maybe like 8 months. Been a couple of years now. Actually, I've been slacking on that, but usually donate here and there. I think people overdo the donations as well, but I overdid the blood donations for a while because I got into genetics a little bit, but I started to get super fatigued. I was doing it like every 2 months for like a year and a half there, and I'm like, I think I'm depleted. I think I need to chill out on this. So I took a break for a little while, and then now on some blood work, I'm like, okay, maybe I'll go like donate like every 8 months or something, not every 2, and it'll be a little bit more reasonable. But I still think overall the nutrient profile when I eat beef, I just, my brain works better. I feel better. I think even grain-fed beef might even be cleaner than most of this chicken out there, just because of the digestive system of the animal itself breaks it down differently. But so chickens are tough. People don't want to hear that. You get called chicken a dirty bird, and people are like, what? Like, I thought I was supposed to be eating like lean chicken, which people do eat a lot of the breast, which I think is a little bit better. But now that like keto and like fats have kind of quit being demonized, you do see a lot more people eating the thighs, which is definitely going to have more of those shitty seed oil fats in them, and in the toxins that are coming out of whatever, depending on what level of chicken you have there. So that's actually the breast is actually probably better if you're going to have shitty chicken, because a lot of it's in the fat, but still can have that chlorine issue. I don't know how you would I don't think there's enough clean birds to make a BERSKI stick. That's going to be a challenge.
Well, the goal is to create our own farm, and also there are ways to do it that with enough money flowing through, there is a way to do it. And I found some farmers that are willing to do it. And all it's going to take is once we get to a certain level, I have some farmers that are willing to play ball with me.
Okay.
And yeah, and make it in a way. It's going to be not like drastically more expensive, but for the consumer, it's going to be more expensive for us to buy the meat. But yeah, I already have plans and works to make that happen. I'm not sure with turkey, but I know with chicken, because they usually have a 4 to 6 week life cycle when they process them. But turkeys I think are like 8 and 9 months before they process them, so it's a little bit longer of a growth period for that bird. Also, I'm looking into ducks, so I'm a big fan of duck.
Duck
So
fat's
having like
awesome.
duck fats, oof, the best.
Yeah, it's the best, probably the best fat to cook with.
Yeah, some roasted potatoes and some duck fat.
Yeah.
I can't get enough of that.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat with the duck fat. It's expensive. It's like, so even if you're buying like Epic or some brand at the store that's like supposed to be cleaner or whatever, I'm not sure. It was Epic kind of sold out, but it seems like they're still relatively clean, at least for store bought product. It's like $20 for a little jar, but man, it really hits. Like, it's better than tallow or anything. But I like lard a lot as well. I get a half of a regenerative pig, or a quarter. Actually, I think I do a quarter of the pig that's regenerative. And every time I bake down like the pork belly or something, like a slow roasted, I take all that fat and I keep it on the side. So I do potatoes in that and stuff. Sometimes it's crazy how good the regenerative pork fat is compared to just like some like regular lard. There's probably no. I've talked about this on the last show too with Charles. There's probably no significant difference that I've noticed in animal products if we're looking at like store bought like cheap pork, and you look at regenerative, they're like not even the same species. It's like two different planets.
Yeah, when I tried my first regenerative pig, I was like, I think I've never eaten pig before. This is what pig's supposed to taste
Yeah,
like? Yeah, it's like
that's my
what?
same experience.
Yeah, I'm like, everyone needs to try this because once they try it, there's no going back. It's like salt and a pig, and that's it, and on a chop, and you're like, this is the best thing ever. It's like, pigs they say are dirty, and it's like, but if you give them only the certain things to eat, then how are they dirty? Yeah, they'll eat the roots out of things, and it's like, but if you give any animal, like a fun example that I learned through this whole endeavor of looking for BERSKI and farmers and things like that. Multiple farmers have told me that farmers in the commercial industry will take chicken poop to conserve on hay, and they'll bring it over to their cows, and their cows will eat the chicken poop, and they'll notice they'll start getting bloated, and then they'll remove the chicken poop. But then they're usually about like 5 to 10 days they'll eat it before they're like, we're sick of this in the wintertime. But then when you're looking at the farmer, it's like, man, he saved 10 days of having to feed cows hay, which to the farmer, great, but to the consumer, knowing this, you're like, this is an odd practice. But yeah, people do this all the time, and those are grass-fed cows as well. And considering that they are grass-fed, but they're not finished.
Yeah. I think there was like it's been a long time since I looked at it. I remember there was like some study where some pig farmers were trying to give them coconut oil to fatten them up, and they all got skinny because the saturated fat. They all got too lean. They thought that they were going to use this like easy accessible fat that you could just get and feed them that and fatten them up for production, and they all got skinny. They were like,
That's
what the
pretty
hell is
funny.
going on here? Yeah, I can't remember where that was published or where I read that, but it was like, that's hilarious. Like they don't even know enough about the animal. Like the animal is gonna love that fat. It's gonna thrive on that coconut oil, even though it's probably not what they normally eat, unless maybe it's like a pig in one of those regions where there's a lot of coconuts. They probably don't normally eat that, but just the actual structure of it itself, it's saturated fat. So they're like, yeah, this is great. Probably had more energy. Probably felt good, leaned out.
Yeah.
They were having a good time.
It's probably much healthier
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, absolutely. They're probably like, this didn't work what we thought. And, that's because saturated fat has just been demonized. They think it makes people fat when I think there's a lot of compounds in it that actually makes you skinny. I think the same, there's, when you get an A2 regenerative dairy, there's actually compounds in dairy that actually, I do find that a lot of people with toxicity can't even digest some of the raw dairy. They got to kind of detox for a bit. It seems like they can't have trouble breaking it down, even if it's like raw, and not everyone can get access to A2 either. It's a little bit more of a challenge. I get lucky that I have it here local, but nevertheless, I think there's compounds in raw dairy that actually, the CLAs and different things that actually kind of keep your metabolism working a little bit better, as long as you're not super toxic and you can break that dairy down. And same thing for saturated fats. And you can overdo fats, like you can overdo carbs, you can overdo calories in general. But if you're keeping it more at a balanced level, I actually think that those fats are very beneficial, and that was on display with those pigs, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's confirmed most of all your fat soluble vitamins are in the animals with the fat. And so when I'm a big thigh guy, so and a dark meat guy. So when I eat duck, it's all dark meat, turkey, dark meat. I prefer dark meat all the time. That's where all the nutrient values are stored. Also all the toxins. So it's like a double-edged sword. So if you have, same thing in a cow. It's like the ribeye on a regenerative steak, you're having all of those fat soluble vitamins, but also on a commercial cow, you're having all of those toxins as well, and potentially plastics and all whatever else they're getting into. Yeah, I mean, we want to start eating the thigh, and we want to start eating the fat and rendering that down. And fat is demonized because they're eating the wrong kind of fat. And then you have people who eat like, I can't believe it's not, whatever. And they're like, man, I'm getting sick. It's like, yeah, because you're eating plastic. Of course you're getting sick. And it's like, it's not the butter, it's not the fat, it's the plastic that you're eating. And your body doesn't know how to process that. And it's your whole existence of every ancestor that it took you to be where you are now. It's never seen this in the last like 50 years in existence. So how is your body going to know how to process this thing that it's never ever seen before? And when you start getting people off of plastics, and which is kind of funny even to say, when you get people off of plastics, and start getting them in organic clothing and cotton clothing, and you stop putting plastics on the skin, and you minimize exposure, getting the glass water bottles or the steel water bottles. Some plastics are unavoidable. But when you start minimizing that exposure and reusable plastics, especially, and you start cleaning up their gut and their parasites and their metals, and you start getting them back to teaching them how to breathe properly, all of a sudden people know how to, all of a sudden their skin clears up and their skin looks better than it did on thousands of dollars of skin supplements and lotions, things like that. And it's like this whole paradigm has been has infiltrated how the mind, um, how people, this whole music. Oh my God, hold on. There's people talking in the background. I need to recollect myself, even with noise canceling headphones. The beauty industry has hijacked. You can't get this way without our product. When in reality, the healthier you eat, the better your skin looks. And it's like that whole industry wouldn't exist if people didn't eat poorly. If people ate clean, there would be less need for, lotions and creams and pimple patches and whatever. Like if you have a pimple and you're after a sauna, so your body's detoxing. You need to get it out of your system. If you're if your skin breaks out during puberty, well, that's normal. Everyone does that, and it's only going to be exaggerated by poor food. And what are kids eating at schools? Terrible food, unless you pack the lunch and take it with you. But then, like, you're the odd person out that's not getting the little cardboard pizza or whatever, the carton of juice or whatever. They're actually pretty cool. When my daughter's school provides subsidized lunches, and it looks like chicken and salad. I was like, still the same kind of poor quality we're talking about. But I'm like, hey, this is not what I ate as a kid. It's like
Right.
a piece of cardboard with something called cheese on it, and you put like a napkin on it, and it would literally dissolve the napkin, and you're like, what? Where'd it go? And you like pick it up, and you have to like do that a couple times. Like, that's what I ate for lunch as a kid. No wonder. I was overweight and out of shape. And if it wasn't for me being naturally active and like riding my bike all the time, being interested in sports, like I'd be screwed. I'd be have extremely obese if I wasn't literally on my bike for like 8 to 10 hours a day after, on weekends and after school. I don't know.
We have the exact same story in that, but like I literally, my mom, single mom, lots of just drive through food. The food at home was just, spaghetti, pasta, whatever. I'm just drinking sodas all day. She always had like cosmic brownies. Like I had no limits on anything. She couldn't even really limit it if she wanted to because she would be gone at work and my older brother would be watching me and he didn't care. He was 7 years older than me, but he was a teenager and he didn't care what I was eating and playing my video games. As long as I wasn't getting into trouble, he was like, whatever. So she couldn't really like reel it in like having a full functioning like unit of a family. To at least limit the soda or limit the brownies. I would just eat like 5 brownies and 2 sodas and go back into my room and play video games. Like it was absolutely horrendous. But I always was in like 3-4 sports a year. I got into powerlifting heavy. So at least when you're kind of building muscle and strength like that, you're kind of uptaking a lot of those carbs and different things. So you're not, I was never like super overweight, but I definitely had a belly. I wasn't skinny by any means. And, but that kept me in shape. I had a lot of bike, right? We were the generation, you seem like you're probably about around my age. I'm 37, going to be 38 in like 6 months. We were like kind of didn't have all. We had video game, but they weren't, Call of Duty. You played Mario here and there for a few hours or some kind of like, Final Fantasy game as you got a little bit older, maybe that took some time, but mostly we were outside a lot and that helped. And I think I would have been way more over. I actually noticed when I quit playing sports, my first semester of college, I gained like 30 pounds because I was in the food court trying to eat the same way that I did when I played sports. And I was just, I ballooned up fast and I was drinking more because I was in college and I even partied a little bit in high school, but in college you're partying more and then so you're not sweating it out when you're playing the sports. And I was like, oh, I had to change my diet fast. So I like quit drinking sodas and juices and the pizzas and I was going more to the stir fry bar and cottage cheese and different things, and so I had to make a change fast because I just didn't want to be overweight, and I gained it so fast that it was alarming. And I was like, wow, so I would have probably been that big the whole time in high school or middle school had I not just been always playing sports and playing with my friends outside. I was just burning through a lot of it, and so I noticed that pretty rapidly. And then I was never as clean as I am now. But we evolve and we learn, and there's more information and more podcasts and stuff now that can kind of teach us to go into that way. But I want to transition into this kind of organ conversation, which we got into the regenerative and the farming practices. People understanding that you're trying to get high quality meats and you're really doing your due diligence, and that's why the products are a little bit more expensive. And I'll caveat that although they're a little bit more expensive, they're also huge. I was like, when I first seen them, I was like, oh, these seem a little pricey. And then I got them in the mail, and I'm like, well, these BERSKIs are huge. They're like the size of 2 or sometimes 3 beef sticks, and they have way more protein. So I was like, okay, they're worth the price, absolutely. Just based on the sure, like even my wife was like, oh, those are huge though. Like, yeah, it was $50, but it's like 2 boxes of beef sticks basically. So kind of can tell that you understand the food system, or at least you've learned a lot more through this program. But you grew up on organ meats, sounds like, and you have, Ukrainian family. I actually know another Ukrainian practitioner that I follow, and she's an organ meat queen, it seems like, and that's probably just part of the tradition. And she actually has a story. I think I heard her on a podcast where she same kind of realization, moved to Canada. You kind of get away from the traditional values, and you're just starting to eat like Americans or the Western world, and it's just like obviously not healthy, but you don't know because back home, food was food, and then you get into this Western world, and food is not what it appears to be. So, what are the importances of organ meats? Tell us maybe a little bit more about how you grew up eating organ meats, anything like that.
Yeah, we didn't have a stigma in Ukraine. I grew up eating tongue, which is mwah, with some horseradish sauce. Ooh,
I
fantastic.
do
And it's
tongue tacos. I don't know if you ever done it that way, but
oh yeah,
you slow roast them. I told
oh
my wife
yeah.
this might be the best taco I've ever had. Tongue.
It's the most tender meat. It's like people are missing out. And heart tastes like steak, and you have like heart tartars and liver pâtés. It's like I grew up with pâtés and liver, and sometimes with kidneys. I mean, this is a not a unusual thing for most of the world, and even in the animal kingdom, like predators, they'll a lot of the time they'll leave the carcasses for the vultures, for the coyotes after they've eat all the organs out of the animal. And but it's us who don't eat the organs, and they keep us eating only the muscle tissue. And it's where the nutrients are the most dense, is in the organ tissue. There's something else that you said I wanted to touch on, but I can't quite remember. Can you rephrase your question? Because I couldn't remember
I
something
was
you said.
basically breaking down the importance of organ meats, but I was also talking about like Ukrainian heritage and moving to the Western world, food not being food, and just kind of talking about the importance of organ meats. So I don't know where you lost your train of thought there, but it's
Ah,
all good.
no, there was something you said in the beginning that I was like, I need to make a point out of that, and I forgot the point. Anyway, but yeah, oh, I remember. Okay, so when you were saying that they were expensive, so I ran some math and things on it. So 70% of the steak is beef, and let's assume the average person wants to also take beef, and they have a liver supplement, right? Most liver supplements have about 600 milligrams of liver inside of them. Well, each one of these sticks is 7 grams, so 10 times, almost 11 times more liver in one of these. So that's to get the same amount, you're going to have to take uh, close to 10 days worth of liver in this one. And in the smaller ones, we do have a smaller one, which I don't know if we have any on hand, but they're like, anyway, they're 1 ounce, they're half the size and less thick. But those have 3.5 grams of liver in there. So you're talking about 6 times the amount of liver. And if you're trying to take a liver supplement, a month's supply of that is about $80. And if you're going to get all the discounts, let's say even $50. And if you're trying to get a month's supply of liver in, you could do that with 3 to 4 of these sticks, and so that way, that $60 package, assuming full retail value, and um, you basically you have a 2 month supply of liver. And if you all you do is eat one of these sticks a month, and you have a 2 month supply of liver in there. And then when you add the meat and the regenerative and the sourcing, um, for the nutritional density of it, it's actually less expensive than buying something that's that you see in all the stores right now, in the nutritional value. Because most people think, how much protein do you eat, how much this. Even though our sticks have a lot of protein, it has more to do with how you absorb and what you absorb than how much you eat. Because if you know we take in 60 grams of protein through a shake, and per protein scoop, that may be, uh, cents on the dollar for per scoop or per gram of protein. But how much of that are we actually absorbing? Because your body has to has to rehydrate that in your system, so you're becoming more dehydrated. Things of those nature. And so when I was doing all this research on dehydration process, so I noticed that if you cook it over 160 degrees, it starts denaturing proteins and breaking down minerals, and so I spent so long trying to find a manufacturer that'll slow cook these things for me. And so we cook them around 140, um, which means that we're not getting to that state where the meat breaks down in and starts to denature the enzymes in the food. So you're going to absorb more of the stick versus getting something that's full of like citric acid, which is a mold derivative, or lactic acid, which is a Streptococcus thermus derivative. Um, which is a whole other thing if we want to get into that. But even malic acid, I found out, is made from genetically engineered E. coli. That's the same thing that's in apples, but when you find it on a malic acid in a bottle, there's only few manufacturers that can get this to people in like by the drum. But so I was like, well, let's get all this in one thing. And when you look at the nutritional profile of liver and heart and all the CoQ10. I mean, there's too many things to list, like magnesium, the zinc, the B12, the vitamin A, the choline. I mean, I'm sure there's some amazing ones that are missing. All the B vitamins you're getting out of it. Folate, it has real tons of folate in there. So women who are pregnant and post-pregnancy, pre-pregnant. I mean, there's so many benefits to eating liver. The challenging part was making it palatable. We got it pretty close, and actually very beyond close. People are like, "Wait, there's liver in here." Um, so I started playing around. I'm like, "Hey, you want to try a beef steak?" And then they try it, and then they're like, "Whoa, this is good." I'm like, "Can you taste the liver?" They're like, and then they become a connoisseur. "Oh yeah, I have faintly, I taste it," and I'm like, "Okay, cool." They wouldn't have known if I didn't say anything. Um, but uh, so yeah, the benefits of organ meat has always been in my life. I didn't know why they were good. It's like it's like grandma type of information where it's like it's good for you, eat it. And but then growing up and like learning through the Czech Institute and seeing all these people talking about organs, I'm like, oh, that's why it's good. We have this innate reach to grab what's good for us, and if our palates will adjust to it, which is actually kind of interesting, is when we were talking about earlier about the how will the person like regenerative meat out of Mickey D's over there. What I think is going to happen if it's real regenerative meat, their palates will start to adjust because like I'm speaking for myself, but if I eat a steak and it tastes like the field that it grew up in, I'm overjoyed. If it doesn't taste like anything but like corn and sweet corn, I'm like, ugh, I don't like this. So what we've noticed is all the people that didn't like BERSKI in the beginning were like, keep eating it. After 5 sticks, their palates change and they're like, oh, I find myself reaching for this thing now. Um, so I think I answered your question. I think I went on a whole separate
Yeah,
side
that that
tangent.
that no, that was great. The palate change thing's interesting because people like I actually, the vegan community would parrot this quite a bit, and my first venture into wanting to be like a health practitioner or health coach was actually a vegan course because I was doing this vegan thing at the time for like a year and a half, and I was like, well, maybe I could just teach people how to be vegan, and that's like actually a big part. And I was like, this makes a lot of sense because I never used to eat all these sprouts and these hummuses and foods you're eating a lot of when you're vegan, but you start to just crave them that's all you eat. And the same can be said for liver and things like that. Now, liver, just like the texture, there's a lot going on. It's very potent. Some people can never get over it, but the amount you taste in the BERSKI is so small that I could see that the palate would probably change over a few beef sticks because it's almost unnoticeable. If you've ate liver before, I used to eat lots of organ meats and then kind of were resorted to the capsules, and we use the capsules in our mineral balancing program as well because it's minerals, it's vitamins, it's also organotherapy and bile support and some herbs and things like that. So it's a kind of people think like, oh, like I say mineral balancing, they think it's like all minerals, but it's not. It's vitamins, it's desiccated organs. There's a lot more to the program to try to support the system. Um, So I do that mostly, and so it's kind of good that you made it like very faint because I think most people do get turned off even if they keep trying it and trying it. It's one of those ones that's just, especially kidney is tough. Kidney, like if anyone's ever ate raw kidney or tried to cook it up, that one's brutal. I've kind of forced myself to eat that for a while, and that's just kind of gave up on that one. But heart is really good, tongue is really good, liver. I could eat liver. I don't mind it as much, but some people can't seem to get over it. But the palate does change, and especially I think with something like a BERSKI where you just kind of can tell it's in there, but not really. Just feels like a beef stick. You probably just eating it on the go for some protein or something when you don't have lunch made or whatever. And I think it's definitely the way to go. But you can do palate anytime you change your diet. It sucks. You can go keto, and you'll be like, "Oh, this fat's not good," and then like a week later, it's all you want to do is drink olive oil out of a cup. So it happens no matter. I've done every diet and tried them all when I was sick, and your palate changes to pretty much anything you begin to give it over time.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to send you some kidney recipes because yeah, we make some good kidneys over here. I haven't figured out how
Yeah, I'll
to
take it because
eat
I
raw.
don't buy them all the time, but I do that half a cattle, and I'll tell them just to give me whatever, the liver, the whatever. So if you got a good recipe for that, I don't know if you need to soak it in milk or something. I think I've heard some, people soaking liver in milk. I'm like, maybe there's just some preparatory phases to the kidney that
Yeah.
makes it a little bit better.
But I can't figure out how to eat spleen or pancreas. Those two are pretty vile. I can't, that's why I'm like, yay, desiccated organs, because that's a great way. Oh, I also eat testicles, so which is like testicles every day, a testicle every day keeps your
Really?
testosterone. Oh yeah, dude, 100%. Yeah, if you start eating testicles raw or dehydrated, you'll feel an immense vitality change within like I don't know 30 minutes of you eating it. It's wild. So um, yeah, the best I can get around here is lamb testicles because they don't castrate them. So there's some lamb farmers that are like, what do I do with these things? I'm like, I'll buy them. So I pretty much buy them out. Yeah,
That's great. I'm kind of a supernatural guy, but also play around with everything. I've been on TRT for like 4 or 5 years. I'm pretty open about it. I feel great on it. I can't complain. I know some people have different experiences with that, but so I'm like, I don't know if I go out of my way and get the testicles, I might ramp that up too high because I'm already on the injections. So, but if you're not doing TRT and you want to keep it more natural, I think it's probably a good way to go. How's the taste on that? Some people say it's creamy. Some people don't like it. What's the taste on the testicle?
raw. Well, if you're eating it raw, it tastes like a chicken with the texture of a scallop. That's
Okay.
that's the so it's a little weird when you first eat it because you're like, am I tasting chicken or am I tasting a scallop? Like, why your brain has to put it together. And I like to well, if I'm eating them raw, because when I take them out to dehydrate, cut them, I always put aside some raw ones for me. But I like to add some lemon pepper, olive oil, and salt, and kind of like drizzle them in there and like chew them and swallow them because they're not like I don't really like crave the taste of raw chicken. Um, but yeah, but when you dehydrate them, I season them with like steak seasoning or like I'll make my own like carne asada seasoning or something like that, and you can get rid of that flavor. But again, now after I've been eating them for I don't know years, it's you don't really notice it. You're like boom down the hatch and you chew in it and you're like got the seasoning today. The texture's good. But I also I can't do slimy things. So like anytime, remember, was it Rocky when he was pounding the raw eggs? And like I tried it one day and it's like, it was like the yolk was like floating in my mouth and it hit the back of my throat. And I was like, nope, 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 nope. I'm cooking these things. I can't eat anything that's like super slimy. Buttery, yeah, but slimy, no. So that's the hard part about the raw because it's kind of like a little wet and my brain is like, get this out of my mouth.
Yeah, I was doing the raw egg yolk on top of like just cooked beef for a while, and when I mixed it in, it was okay, and I did feel pretty good from having that raw egg yolk. But I just like cooked eggs; they're good. I try to like keep the yolk runny as I can on them and keep the temperature low and just fry them in some butter. And that's my favorite breakfast, so it's hard for me to get away from that. I want to touch on this. I want to ask: are there even any other beef stick companies who are processing them in a way that's trying to keep that enzymatic activity up where they're doing it at that lower temperature, slow cooked, or you as far as you know, the only company?
We are the only company that uses whole organs in our sticks, and there are some other company that are trying to get into the organ game, but I don't know if they cook them at lower temperatures. Biltong is always cooked, so there's like jerkies that are dried naturally at lower temperatures. There's tons of them. Like I think that's a South African recipe where biltong comes from, and I think they air dry all that stuff. So
Yeah,
there
biltong's
are
great.
yeah. So as long as you get the grass fed, pasture raised, that whole song and dance, um, it's a great alternative if you're trying to get only meat in, and yeah, it's wonderful. So there are other meat companies, dried meat companies that do it, and mostly if you get biltong, you're gonna get an air dried steak. You're gonna get air dried kind of like meat texture, and not done in a smokehouse. So, but in a smokehouse, I don't know of any other company that's doing that, especially adding whole organs, cooking at a low temp, removed all the preservatives altogether, and then slapped it on a USDA label and yeah.
Yeah, and organs are interesting as well, because I think there's more to them than we even actually know, like whether it be peptides, whether it be things that we're just too monkey brain to even know what to look for. Like there's could be lots of different things inside. We know how to test for zinc and copper and these things, and peptides are becoming all the craze. And I actually think the peptide bioregulators are really cool. They're still well, there are some synthetics, which I'm not a anti-synthetic guy. Just said I was on TRT. I like synthetic peptides too, for optimization if you feel good on them. But for the people who do like more natural stuff, some of those peptide bioregulators are actually made from organs, but they're concentrating the specific peptide. And they've used them in Russia for decades, who has some of the lowest rates of cancer and stuff like that. So there are cool kind of peptide bioregulators that are coming on the market that are technically made from desiccated organs. They're a little bit more than the synthetics, obviously, because they need a bunch of natural sources to create those. So I think organs are cool. But I've heard you break down this kind of older study, which I think would be cool for my audience. I can't remember the name of the doctor, but you said he had some sketchy practices here and there, but he did dye the organs, and he would actually see the dye show. Like if he gave it dye the liver, it would show up in the liver. So who was this doctor, and what was his studies about?
You literally said it, and it flew out of my mind. It's the guy that did the cats, all the cats, and it's driving me nuts. If you didn't ask me to recall it, it's gonna drive me insane, and I apologize for completely. Let me see if guy who studied cats. Oh my God, no, no, no. Where's this guy? Come on, fly into my brain, please.
Usually comes after a minute. Even if you just start talking about the study, it'll probably come into your brain. Usually
Okay,
how it works.
okay. Let's try that. I will get it to you. So this was a very obscure study. I think the Liver King got in trouble for misquoting it. He said they used radioisotopes um, to. It wasn't maybe it was Schrodinger. Schrodinger's cats. I think that's him. Um, and or is that the guy who put his cat in a box and then I, it might be him. I will get you the study because it was very hard to find. It was on a PDF
I think this
of
is the
his.
name because I've heard you say before, Pottinger. Is Pottinger right?
Thank you. Pottinger's cats. Thank you. Yes.
I was like, I can't
Oh,
remember it, but if I see the name, maybe it'll come to
oh my
me.
God, that was like a sneeze coming out of my brain. Thank you so much. Okay, Pottinger. Yeah. So Pottinger injected dye into different organs and fed it to his cats. And then he would X-ray his cats, and then he would find that liver. A lot of the dye from that would show up in that he fed to the cats would show up in the liver, and he's like, he give him heart, and it would dye in it, and it'd show up in around their heart tissue, and then so kidneys would show up around their kidney tissue, and um, I don't know if he did anything with it, but it was a very interesting thing that he found out by messing around with cats. Um, and so these are the same things. And as you were talking about, like, are there peptides in liver? Yes, yes, there are. Most personal trainers are brought uh, to this to this concept that all food that you put in your body will break down to fats, proteins, and carbohydrates in the simplest form. 90% of that won't break down to its simplest form. 10% or less will go down to those kind of states depending on how someone's good digestive system is. But as your body, so Carl Jung talks about whenever you eat, your body has to forget the consciousness of that animal, or else you'll turn into that animal. I'm sure if you've been around enough chicken farmers, you'll see they kind of a little bit look like chickens. They have kind of the same posture as chickens and mannerism as chicken. Same thing with beef guys. They're like hardy beef dudes, chewing on straw. And so your body has to forget the consciousness of the animal. So once you eat liver and it breaks it down to a point where it's unrecognizable that it's a cow anymore, that chain of peptides and amino acids can be transported as one to wherever it needs to go. And it goes like a Lego block. You don't need to make everything out of single Lego blocks. It's like there's a four, there's a bent one, there's a tall one. And it's like, oh, I'll put that there up. And then so you can rebuild a system by making your body makes recognizable decisions off of what you're eating, and then transports that whole amino chain or peptide chain across into where it needs to go, including your liver. So if you eat heart, it goes to your heart, kidneys go to kidneys, which is why eating organs is so valuable. It's because they rebuild your body. So when you eat testicles, those testicles get rebuilt by what you're eating. And so I heard Paul Chek say once, and it's, I always credit him. It's such a simple thing, but it's still profound. It's like, how does your body remake your body out of a Cheeto or something like that? Like, how does your body remake an eye cell from this 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 processed food? And so in other cultures, they eat the eyes, they eat the brains, they eat the organs and the skin, and you have Vietnamese pho, and you're eating tendons and making tendon broth and collagen. You're making all of these things, eating the whole animal, and yet we've kind of gotten away from that, and we need to get back to it.
Yeah, it's interesting you say. I used to do a lot of fine dining, serving before I kind of got into my business and everything. And I worked at this fine dining restaurant where we would boil the lobsters live. You could pick the one out of the tank that you wanted, whatever, and boil it right there. And whenever the Asian cultures came in, they were like, we wanted everything. They're eating the brain, the eye. They actually would eat the brain and the eyes and stuff first, and then they would go into the more delicate meat and dip that into some butter. And I really kind of opened my eyes to like, wow, they're eating everything right here. Like, I thought I was cool because I was experimenting with liver here and there at that time. That was like probably almost a decade ago. But I'm like, holy shit, they're eating the brain right out of this animal that just came out of this boiled pot. And they loved it, and they ate the eyes, and they were huge on meat, and they were thin. And I was always like, that was kind of, I was coming off of my vegan experiment. I actually it was funny. I was serving fine dining steaks, and I was vegan there for a minute, but I was just making ends meet, and I was making great money. Because I was, I ate meat my whole life. I kind of tried not to judge people who were eating meat, because I was like, just because I went vegan, although that's not the average vegan community. They're pretty gung ho. They're kind of crazy with it a little bit. But I tried to be more level headed than that, and realized that you just quit eating meat 6 months ago. You're not the Buddha here. You're just the guy trying out a diet. So I was still in there serving steaks. But yeah, it was interesting to see the Asian cultures go for all of, they wanted the whole animal. They didn't care, and they wanted to break it apart and share it around to the kids. And they ate mostly meat. I don't feel like they really ate our bread. I don't feel like they maybe had some veggies. They were just carnivorous. They had the biggest steaks, the lobster. That was most of their diet, and they were all far thinner than every American that was coming in there to eat by a mile. And so that opened my eyes a little bit. I'm like, yeah, maybe meat doesn't make you fat. And ever since then, I tried carnivore, and I was like the skinniest I ever been by eating like 3 pounds of beef a day. I'm like, but clearly the meat itself's not making me fat here. And I was just eating organs and meat, and I would have a little bit of honey, like if I felt like I was tanked on energy, like maybe once a week. Uh, it was absolutely crazy to to see that as a culture. And then you start to realize other cultures, or European cultures, or like you're from, are eating a lot of this stuff, and it's just absolutely crazy how far we got away from it. But yeah, I think there's like lots of different peptides and things, and that dye study is just interesting because it's at least bare minimum showing that the organ you eat is going to localize within the organ, and it's kind of this like heals like type of deal that we've lost. Like, we think we can just sit around and eat muscle meat all day, but you are, unless you're taking a bunch of supplements, like you're on a program like mine, you are going to want some of those nutrients that come from organs. And like I said, we still even use organs, even though we're given like mineral chelates that are made in a lab and ascorbic acid and things like that. We're still using desiccated organs because they're supportive. And I think there's more to them, even in a desiccated form. They're not as good as what you're doing, where it's like raw and the enzymes are there, but it's easier for people to get in sometimes just in capsule form. So we are using that and for people to at least get some of those bioavailable nutrients. And if you're taking them day after day after day, I think they at least accumulate to some degree. And the one thing before we wind down here is a lot of beef sticks. This we're getting some better regenerative ones, and Paleo Valleys I ate for a while. And there's some definitely some better ones that are emerging. I think you clearly have stolen the show, though, in my opinion. Is one thing that there's always like I don't think people really pay attention to enough because they're just like, whatever, I'm eating a beef stick, it's meat, it's grass fed, it's whatever, is the actual casing that it's made from. And the outside can be, all sorts of different things that you need to look into in gelatin. I don't really know them all because I've never done the food system, but I know I kind of try to pay attention to what the actual casing is. Tell us what the most common casing is, what you did with yours to make it different. I know that's a big deal on BERSKI's behalf as well.
Yeah. The mostly the casings are dyed. That's what you get that nice red color. So they'll do a dyed casing. So we went with the non-dyed casing for one. We were like, guys, can you guys order us some
Step
non-dyed
one, no
casings?
dye.
Yeah, and they're like, yeah, we could do that. So then I was curious because following my intuition, I was like, actually, I should go look up how collagen casings are made. Why are they so popular? And basically, it's a way they found a way to use cowhides because that's one of the biggest waste in the industry. One of the biggest wastes is cowhides because you have to process them, and by the time you process them and try to sell them, it's you can't sell them, and it takes you more to process it and then sell it, and you lose money. So they like throw the hides away. But what you could do is you could dump either an alkaline solution or an acidic solution on a hide, and it separates the collagen from it. They skim it off, and then they purify it, and then they put it into like a forming tray, and then it forms into the collagen casing, and then you stuff it. So there's I think a 5 to 7 step process to go from a cowhide to a collagen casing, and I'm like, well, where along this path is this weird? And so it started in the beginning for me, which is like they bleach it or they dye it, or sorry, they bleach it or they pour some kind of like a acidic solution on it to create that separation and to melt the bonds of the skin apart so they can get the released collagen. And I was like, I don't like that. What's the other solution? The intestine. I'm like, oh, we have a trend for organs here. So I'm like, okay, well, can we do a non-dyed organ casing? They're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, great. Why are we thinking about this? Let's go. And so I know the collagen is used because it's a big buzzword now. Everyone wants to get more collagen in their system. Um, but yeah, drink some bone broth. There's plenty of collagen in bone broth, and take some bone broth powder if you want it, or um, go get some pho from a Vietnamese restaurant that's probably has MSG in it, but you know. Uh, but what I'm saying is that's how I landed uh, on the non-dyed beef casing because it didn't make sense to me that everyone wanted this collagen casing. And all you have to do is look up how stuff is made, and then you're like, well, it's pretty clear and cut, dry argument for why not to use a collagen casing long term. Because I mean, it's coming out of the animal anyway. Might as well use the organ. And then all they do for the intestinal lining is they clean it, so it makes it less processed. Animal already made it.
And that's what you're using on as your casing, right?
Correct. A non-dyed beef intestinal casing, which then
So
goes
it's
to your
the
intestines.
actual, yeah. We have a little bit of stomach and intestines in our digestive aid that we use on our program. Actually, it's a small amount, but I think when you're taking it 3 times a day and you're taking it every day, it can build up. It's better than nothing. We had the trouble with using a bunch of ingredients in a capsule is how much you can actually fit in one capsule without making every serving size like 3 or 4 capsules. Because we got a few that have a lot of ingredients and they have to be like a 2 and 3 capsule serving size. So we tried to make that digestive aid just to be a 1 capsule, so we could only fit a certain amount in there. But when you're taking it 3 times a day and it's like 50 milligrams of each, but it's a small amount, but it's better than nothing. But you're have just the straight intestinal casing, which is, I would have to imagine that's probably the more ancestral way. I would think that they probably used that. There was a lot of people who say that that's kind of how we would eat. Like they would eat the stomach salad. Like they would be like when you killed the animal, there would be this intestines in there, and they would eat it, and they would eat the fermented, plant matter that was in there as kind of like that was like natural fermentation already happening at that level. And so they would eat the stomach, the intestines. And I think you already alluded to how a lot of wild animals will just go for the organs first. And sometimes they leave the rest of the animal there to decay. They just, they ride out with the liver and the heart and they slide out onto the next person. And we're over here thinking that we can just discard all of those, and just eat muscle meat all day. And that's actually another just kind of sidetrack. The reason why I buy half a cattle at a time is so that it forces me to change my amino acid profile quite frequently, because when you buy the whole every cut, you're forced to like, okay, I've never made a London broil until I started, buying half a cattle, but now I have it sitting in my freezer. So I got to figure out a London broil recipe, or, I like short ribs at a restaurant, but I never really cooked them. But now that I have 8 packs of short ribs sitting here, you're going to figure out a short rib recipe for it. So it's like kind of forces you eat those cuts of meat that you wouldn't always eat. And burger's pretty decent because it is some blends of things. And so like actually, people like poo on burger meat because it's not as good as a ribeye, obviously, but you're actually going to get a better amino acid profile probably long term with a burger meat. So it's good to kind of have a little bit of burger meat, but then also have your steaks. But I think the best way is to buy in bulk and force yourself to have to use all those different cuts and different roasts and different things, but also adding in I always take the organs and the bones, and I take the suet fat, and I take all of that and make sure I have all that in my diet.
Yeah. It's a good way to do it, especially with burger meat. People are forgetting that if you're buying a whole cow, you're going to get trimmings of fillet, you're going to get trimmings of prime rib, you're going to get trimmings of sirloins. All that gets trimmed off goes into the burger meat, and so it's like, yeah, it's all of that trim that they get from the whole cow, and you're going to get a really rich profile. And we were talking about earlier how you were saying how they are combining thousands of animals into, you don't know what you're getting, but like off of one cow, you're getting some fillet in yours, you're getting some prime rib
Yeah.
in yours, you're getting all of these cuts of the whole cow back into your burger, um, which is, yeah, people don't think about it, probably because it's not their job. It's like my work, my passion in life is creating this for figuring out health for people. So I don't, I don't have any, harbor any feelings or like, oh, how did you not know this? It's like, yeah, because it's like you didn't go to school for this. You didn't. This isn't what's on your mind every day, and we're over here trying to like push that along a little bit, and people will buy our services to help them catch up, and instead bridge the gap of how many hours or years it would take them to figure out like go to bed on time, or what's the value of that. No one's ever explained it to them, why they need to drink water, or why they need to eat pasture raised or grass fed, and what the difference is. And then once they know, they're like, oh, got it, okay, I have my farmer, I have my food, I have my everything, I have what I need to sleep, I know how to work out. And it's like, oh, now I can go back to work and I don't have to like sift through the internet and figure out what's the best way for me. You told me you went on so many different diets to figure out what works. And yeah, it's like how many people have been spending years trying to figure out like what's the best quality food? Is this even worth it? I don't see a difference. And it's like there's a combination of so many things that have to be in place for them to fit in properly. And if they're a little bit off, or their mind's not in the right place, or they're not patient enough, they're like, I'm gonna go back to doing what I was doing. But once they cross that bridge, you know what I'm talking about. Is once they cross that bridge, there's no looking back, because you're like, oh, I know what that feels like, and that sucks. And so now they feel good, and they know what eating bad feels like, or sleeping bad, or what happens after drinking. Their body actually feels it. How many clients, I'm sure, do you have? Because I have plenty of them. They're like, oh, I don't even feel it when I'm like hungover. Like I don't even notice it. And I'm like, oh no, you
Yeah.
notice it, but you're like you've ignored it, and so that's your new normal state of energy. And let's get you out of that state, so then you can actually. And then they go and they drink again, and they're like, man, I feel terrible. I'm like, yeah, that's what you always feel like, always.
Yeah, I agree. The water thing that you even said, I kind of like, I just assumed as for a while there that like people were drinking water, and they're not. And then they're trying
They're
to do
not.
like this detox program, and they're like, I had this going on and that going on, and I'm thinking, moving heavy metals out of your brain and organs could definitely cause all sorts of symptoms and Herx reactions. But one common denominator I started really, how much water are you drinking? And it would be low. And I'm like, yeah, like if you're doing a detox program specifically, you actually have to even need a little bit above what you're probably required daily. The kidneys are going to need that to help filter. I mean, whenever I detoxed, I'm still detoxing here and there, but, I just naturally wanted more water. I could tell that my body was craving it, but not everyone's as in tune, I guess. And they're like, I drink 1 liter. Like some people say like 1 liter. Like I'm like 1 liter of water a day. That's crazy. Even if you're not
I've
on a
heard a cup.
detox program, what are you drinking? You know what I mean? Like
Coffee,
so,
soda, all that stuff.
yeah. And a lot of my clients have been, because I do deal with more like kind of chronic conditions or people who are really tried a lot of things. So most of them are doing decent, but it seems like water intake, I think that they just kind of sip it here and there or drink it when they feel like, and you got to kind of push them along on that. But then some of them obviously are just lost. Their diet's trash. Everything's off, and you got to kind of tweak tons of things with them. But water intake was just a really interesting one that I just thought everyone was, if you've already been trying different protocols and then you're kind of in the health space already, I thought everyone was drinking water, and they're definitely not drinking enough water at all.
Yeah. And then when they get thirsty, they drink water with their food, which dilutes their stomach acid. And then it goes in your stomach acid doesn't trigger bile production because you need an acidic stomach contents to trigger bile production. Then it's diluted, then it ferments and rots in their system, attracting parasites and fungus. And then they're like, why, and then it's like, no, 30 minutes before or 30 minutes after, don't touch water while you eat. And it's like basic little things like that. And then you explain like, yeah, it's going to dilute the stomach content, which how does hydrochloric acid break down your food then? And they're like, oh, I didn't think about that. Well, we're thinking about it. And it changes people's lives. Like, don't drink while you eat. And they're like, whoa, I can digest food again. Little basic
That's
things.
actually a big one that worked for me really well. And my wife's always like, I don't know how you don't drink water. I mean, I have a sip here and there if I need it, but for the most part, I have a little sip where I take my supplements, and then I don't, drink water again for at least a half hour after the meal. Almost always, but every once in a while you kind of feel like you need a sip, but I'm not like chugging water. And at a nice restaurant, I love a good sparkling water. So I kind of when I'm out to eat, I'm usually fucking up anyway. So I'm just kind of like, whatever, sparkling water. It might even have a dessert here and there, but we don't do that very often. But so when I'm out, I kind of just let loose every once in a while. But you pay for it. You have 1, 2 cocktails, you have the dessert, and you have sparkling water throughout the whole meal. And you're like, yeah, that's why you don't do that. But every few months or whatever, because it's just not even worth it. But it's delicious and it's social, social gathering. So I kind of like the aspect of being social and, connecting with, at least my wife or other people. But yeah, what have we left anything out about BERSKI that you want to touch on? I feel like we kind of got into nutrient profiles, how you do things a little bit differently, the size, the casing, anything that we left off that you're really itching to talk about?
That I'm itching to talk about. Let's see. We left out the preservatives because I found out how they were made and what they're about. We have some new flavors coming out. So the salted, did I send you both salt and pepper?
I think you gave me one free box, but I ended up buying one as well. So you sent, I don't know, whatever, you gave me a discount
Did
code.
you?
So I ended up getting both. They're both delicious.
And so we have another one coming out. So the goal is it's going to be stepped up in spice. So like we have a Cajun one coming out probably in the beginning of 2026, and you can't taste nothing. I don't care who says what. You can't taste liver in it at all, but it does get masked by the heat. And so it's like a really good flavor profile. That's
I
kind of
like
like
Cajun.
yeah, it's good. We added a touch of habanero in there, and it takes you up, but doesn't murder you. When you get kind of
Yeah, yeah.
scared, you're like, is this gonna stop? But other than that, besides the preservatives being gone, then yeah, I think that's it. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. That is, we did. I'm did the best that I could to make something that doesn't exist on the market. To help people with their malnutrition. We've already had people report back that their anemia is gone. People healing their skin issues. I've tested this on people with oxalate sensitivities because people like are always terrified of celery, and so I have some very sensitive clients, and I tried it on them as well, and they're like, "Oh, I have no reactions to BERSKI, even though we use celery salt." which has been really fascinating to see. And because that's what I was worried about. I was like, what's going to happen with celery? People are like panicked about oxalates,
Yeah.
and so before we even launched and had product like on a label, I was giving these out to people, and I'm like, really, nothing? They're like, nothing. I can actually digest this. So I'm like, okay, cool. I feel comfortable bringing this out. Um, and yeah, kids with nutritional deficiencies, adults with nutritional deficiencies, you get the vitamins, the cholesterol, the because people forget cholesterol is what makes up myelin. All your nerves is made up of cholesterol, and and is a precursor to all the hormones that are in your body. And so how do you can't make testosterone without cholesterol, and you can't make estrogen without cholesterol. You can't make your cell walls without cholesterol. And if you know cholesterol makes up myelin, and think 90% of your brain is wrapped in myelin. So how are you going to regenerate your brain without cholesterol? So there's a healthy amount of cholesterol in there. There's a great amount of fat, tons of. I mean, I think we overpacked vitamins and minerals in there because I think at some point it's like you can't jumpstart a car by microdosing them a little bit. You got to like macro dose them and let their body figure out how much it needs, and then they can regulate themselves after. So this is kind of the intention behind it. As from one intention of the aspect is like getting people nutrition back into their system because they're very mineral deficient and nutrient deficient. The other aspect was we only use USA beef, so all the beef comes from the United States, which is like I want the farmers of the United States to benefit. And I know a lot of other companies use like Australian and Argentinian and New Zealand. There's a lot of other countries that also produce good quality cows. But I'm like, that doesn't help American farmers. And so I want to get back into growing our agricultural system here properly, not in a different
I
country.
agree.
And so that's what's really important to me. And I'm going to keep fighting to keep it in the United States. And I imagine, again, it's like it's not very hard to go to a farmer and go, stop feeding your cows wheat and we'll pay for the cow. And then they're like, oh, okay, you'll pay it for what I sell it for on that. And it's like, yes, whatever meat you have, I'll pay for it. And that's what we've been doing right now is like, what's the meat price? K. How much do you need to thrive and to keep growing? We need this price. Great, I'll pay for that price. And so then that we factor that into the cost. Yeah, I think most of the cost that we have is meat, and I'm proud of that. I think that's really really good. Most of people's product is actually in packaging. I don't know if you knew that. Most people's profit margins are sucked into packaging, but ours is our meat cost is our most expensive thing. So that means we're doing something right. I think it means the farmers are
Yeah, I
winning.
think I heard you say on another show, I can't remember, listening to a few that you were on, and that you don't even really negotiate with the farmers. They say, this is the price I usually get for beef. You say, okay, here it is, and I'll buy it in bulk.
Yeah,
Good for you.
yeah. Yeah, as long as the numbers work, and they do, there are some farmers that quoted like some small farmers. Like I go to a farmer and they have like two cows, and I'm like, how much is and I'm like, I can't afford that. Like the model doesn't work at all, and so eventually it'll go into uh buying the whole cow in and of itself, and I'll prepay for the cow, and they'll grow it, and then we'll keep working it that way. Um, but yeah, it's like I found farmers to be the most underappreciated, I guess, underappreciated people in our society. I think they're underappreciated because people don't know how much weight they actually pull. People really don't know. If they did, they would be the ones that are like getting tech CEO money. Like you're responsible for feeding everyone, and it breaks my heart that they're like treated like peasants. And so I have a bigger vision for what farming is going to do and how to make it actually less expensive in the future, because a lot of these farmers also aren't business people. And I wouldn't call myself a business person, but I see math in my head and the math lines up. And my wife will, if you ask my wife, like, what's Alex's favorite saying? He's like, oh, I did the math. And so I'm always doing the math on things. And if it makes sense, then it works. And so I'm like, I want to see farmers grow. I want to see the industry change. I want to see people getting healthier. And I want to see kids getting healthier. I want to see kids going to school with good quality food. And so, they're not put on all these meds to help them concentrate because they're pumped full of sugar. And yeah, no kidding. Like, not even adults can concentrate. If I gave you like two sodas and told you to sit still, like, then we expect these like little kids to do it, and then we put them on amphetamines. Like, what? Our vulnerable children, we put them on amphetamines to get them to sit still and concentrate. That blows my mind. Um, but what I can control is my family, and then like the people that I reach, and then continuously move outwards to make better decisions and to pay with their dollar a little bit better, and watch the things that they want to grow, and watch them grow and take over, and we'll have a new thing before we know it.
Yeah, beautifully said. I align with all the values, and more so in today's world. I tried to be more American forward as well with my spending, because it seems to make sense. For just buying all this cheap shit from overseas that half the time you got to replace in a year anyways, or it doesn't help any kind of, doesn't, you want the money circulate back in the country, and it's nothing against any other country. If you live in Europe, maybe buy cattle from Europe. I don't know, like figure out a guy over there that's doing something like this. And sometimes you do get some stuff from overseas, but I try to make a valiant effort to keep it within America nowadays as I get older. And I think that makes the most sense, but especially with food and food products, because these ranchers they've been hated on, demonized. You see it in other countries. They're trying to stop cattle farmer. You see some of these places in Europe where they got to go. They're like spraying horse manure in France or wherever, Denmark or wherever that was. They were like spraying manure on the Capitol building because they were throwing all these regulations and shit on the farmers, and it's absolutely just crazy. Like, these are the people that keep society alive. Period. Like, you're not, unless you're going to farm some, grow all your own food, which 99% of people are not. These farmers need to get paid somehow. So I honor you for giving them everything that they're worth and keeping it in American base. And it's perfect. I think he's on the go. My kid's a little bit too small. He's just about to turn 1, so he can't quite chew on the beef stick yet. But within the next year, I would imagine he could probably he's got like 6 teeth coming through right now. So sooner than later, he'll be chomping on a BERSKI here and there. And that's great, because we don't eat we don't even really take snacks because we eat nutritious food. But every once in a while, if you're going to be gone for the day, you want to, I take a Jacob Bar's another kind of cool thing that I do. He does like a grass-fed whey with raw honey. It's like a protein bar. But honestly, I'd probably rather just do the BERSKI. So I keep both because the other one's kind of sweeter and it kind of gives you some carbs or whatever. But it kind of tastes more like a dessert. It's got some almond butter in it and shit. But for the most part, I'll probably be stocking up on the BERSKIs, and I think everyone should check them out. They taste great. They're, you would think that, like, I was like, okay, these are a little expensive, but if they're regenerative, I always pay more for regenerative, so I didn't even care. But I'll tell you, when you get the bag, and you're going to realize how actually big they are. And then they have the organs, and it's a great way to get your organs in, especially if if you're just like that person who likes to do it like once or twice a week. Well, you could just easily eat like 1 or 2 beef sticks a week instead of going out of your way to buy. Not everyone buys half a cattle like me, so you're not constantly have the organs right in your freezer, so you got to go out of your way to get them and all that. So makes it easy, super good, nutritious snack for the kids. So I love what you're doing. Why don't you tell everybody before we jump off? Like, I know you do a lot of work, and you're in Austin. I'm pretty sure you're doing work in person. You're doing work virtually with clients. You also have BERSKI, so you can plug any kind of health coaching or in person or the BERSKI websites, whatever you want.
All right. Yeah. You can follow us. You can follow me at health.performance.engineer. My personal coaching practice is primalfusionhealth.com. And the next step up, we have a community site called bodybuildinginstitute.com, where we go and we coach live every Monday for 2 hours as a way to make our services more affordable. And then there's so many resources and people and cross collaborations, and you get to meet people who are like-minded, and get your questions answered. Like if you were doing a podcast, but literally like, what is your question? And then we go deep into it, not like give you a quick response. And to follow us on Eat BERSKI, it's Eat BERSKI, all through across all platforms. It's at Eat BERSKI with eatberski.com. And I'll probably give you a code that you can give to your listeners to give them
Yeah.
a good discount.
Cool, that'll work. We'll throw the affiliate code or whatever in the intro whenever we figure that out. But awesome, man. Thanks so much for doing the show. I thought it was awesome, and stick around while I close it out.
Perfect.